We're now here in the Nozik Synagogue, the only synagogue that survived World War II. This synagogue was built in 1902 by a gentleman named Zalman Nozik, who lived just across the street. He wanted a nice shul to be able to daven in. 3.5 million Jews before the war, 90% murdered during the war, still leaving. 10% alive is 350,000 Jews after the war. The vast majority leave. The early 90s, the first question really was, are there Jews? I mean, is this just somebody's fantasy that there are Jews left in Poland, or does it really exist? By the late 90s, we were already clear that not only we had critical mass, but the critical mass was interested in somehow being Jewish. And then over the last 10 years, really the question is how do you make from these people a community?
Leon, po polsku, ale Leif Leon.
Favorite meaning?
Nie.
Jeszcze nie. Kiedy my robimy tutaj w Nożyka, ja zaproszę specjalny ekspert z Stanów.
This is the gathering of the second generation of Jews, which means we are the children of the Holocaust survivors. I found out about my Jewishness when I was 19, which means I didn't know nothing about our Jewishness and culture and tradition and religion.
My mother is a ghetto survivor. She was found by nuns in the cave under the pavement, and I don't know what it really means for me to be Jew, to have Jewish roots, to have the mother who miraculously survived, and with the signs on her skin, that's what I can say, saying who is she really.
My mom is Jewish, my dad is Catholic, and my grandma on my father's side had some mixed feelings about Jews, we could say anti-Semitic inclinations. So she used to say really bad stuff. My first impression was I was really excited. What does it mean? I'm Jewish, and I started going and telling everybody that I'm Jewish. My mom, of course, made me promise I won't, but I still went to my closest friends and I told her, like, I'm Jewish, like as a secret, For anybody who felt that they're not following the crowd, being Jewish felt like a way to be different. There's also another side to the story of people who really felt that there's something missing. That are growing in the country, they're starting to hear some Jewish stories, that there were Jews here, but they don't know anything about these people, and they felt like that they want to learn more. But there's also a problem of how they understand the Jew. The Polish Jew is the Jew before the war, or the Polish Jew in America. The Polish Jew who stayed here, not so much.
Как мне было 10-11 лет, я смотрел телевизор, и в телевизоре я увидел Шимона Шурмея. Это такой очень популярный в Польше режиссер, актер, еврей еврейского театра в Варшаве. И я сказал моей маме: вот, это старый еврей Шурми в телевизии. А моя мама мне ответила, да, ты тоже еврей. Я услышал, как еврей, я тоже? Она, ну да, твой папа еврей, ты не знал? Я сказал, нет, не знал. Я был в таком шоке, да. Ну,
Да, они тебе просто забыли сказать.
да, забыли сказать.
А в синагогу ты ходишь?
Нет, я хожу здесь в храм, потому что моя мама, она православная. Она из востока Польши, и мы православные, у меня было крещение, да, и там и помазание, все.
Да, в православной церкви.
Ну, а как?
О, тут так как я.
Мгм.
Мама папы еврейка, врач, а мама мамы это матушка. Мы уже меня евреи приманили, я теперь только к евреям хожу. Но бабушке не говорю, чтобы ее сердце не болело. Чтобы она не переживала. Я даже слышала, что некоторые люди обманывают, что они евреи, потому что это... ну, это интересно, это как-то экзотично немножко.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לשב בסוכה.
אמן.
לחיים.
לחיים.
חג סוכות שמח. I am from mixed family. The person who is mostly against this, what we do here, is my grandfather who is Jewish.
From the point of view of people who are really Jewish, it might seem not natural what we do now, but I think that everybody builds their own feeling, their own sense of what is natural and what is not.
My life story is quite unusual for most of the Jews here in Poland of my generation, because I always knew that I was Jewish. My grandfather had that argument with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God. He said because he lost two sons in the World War II, because he was in the concentration camp in Stutthof, and his wife also. So he said, I don't want to be religious anymore. But at a certain point of life, he decided, you have to know how to pray. It was strange because all the children around were Roman Catholics. They were going to church, they had, their Christmas tree, and we didn't have that. At that time, we had to go to school from Monday to Saturday. And I had that math teacher, and she was taking me out of school on Saturday. So she said, you're Jewish, you can't be at school on Saturday. So she was taking me home. And she was finding a lot of justification for the school headmaster why I can't be on school on Saturdays. When kids saw you're not attending the church, you were not in the church community, so they were calling you names and other stuff like that. We still don't know how many Jews live in Poland. It's not very important. That is important to show the Nazis didn't win, actually. That we won, because we are here. Wir sind da. We will be here.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלמו. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מחולל ותשבחות.
We are a community. We have a rabbi. We do conversion classes. We do between 12 and 20 conversions a year. I was born in 1936. We survived in a cellar under a cellar for about 2 years. But we also survived thanks to some decent Catholics. One time was truly extraordinary because in the morning, my mother held me by the hand, we knock on a door, and here comes out a babushka, very active woman dressed, with a scarf. She looks at us, steps out, and starts screaming at the top of her lungs, "I hate Jews, get away from here, don't ever come back, ever, 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 I never want to see you, just go away." And then she told my mother, "Go to the stodol, go to the barn." And every morning, milk, fresh milk and fresh bread for days. The screaming was for the neighbors.
Wyniosły i wywyższyły, wielki i zatrważający, oczy pokory dumnych i wyższa poniżonych, wyzwala uwięzionych i wybawia cierpiących, pomaga biednym, odpowiada na błaganie ludu swego.
I did not feel that Poland should be Judenrein, no Jews. This was our country. The wild strawberries are our wild strawberries. The apples are our apples. The kasha is our kasha. Pierogi, the fish, the carp, this is all ours. It's also Polish, but I don't know whose it is more. Is it more Polish or is it more ours?
This is the building of Department of Psychology of the University of Warsaw, and this is where I work. During the Holocaust, it was the headquarters of SS in the ghetto. This beautiful garden, this was the place from which Warsaw Jews were taken to Treblinka. And this also includes the family of my grandfather, all of his parents and his siblings. When I studied here, I was a little bit scared by the building. But later on, I felt that maybe there's some sense in it, that we are doing psychology, social psychology, in this building, a science that was hated by Hitler. In Warsaw, we have football hooligans who tend to be very nationalistic. Here you can see Celtic cross, a symbol of neo-Nazi groups. But over the symbol, there is a painted red circle with 3 arrows. So this was the same symbol that was used by left-wing anti-fascist opposition in Poland during the Second World War. I just feel both Polish and Jewish, and it's not anything I can compare. Sometimes I'm a little bit ashamed when I see too much of Polish nationalism, when I see Polish nationalists working, creating their own ideas and perceiving their nation as something better than other nations. And sometimes I feel ashamed when I see situations like this one, where I see people who wave their flags in a place of tragedy and not a place of any form of nationalism. I feel very offended when I hear Israeli people, telling me, this is not your place, you should go to Israel. When are you going to leave? I'm not leaving.
started here a project that we call Kibbutz Warszawa, Kibbutz Warsaw. Here we have a nice sukkah, our vegetable garden. The idea is that there is so much land within the city limits that you can cultivate it and you can have your own food. Right now, one of the biggest topics for the local Jewish community is the Museum of the History of Polish Jews. The Polish government want to show that Poles saved Jews during the Holocaust, which is true, but this is not the whole truth.
על נטילת לולב. על נטילת לולב czy
על נטילת לולב.
bez bacha czy coś
Tak,
tam?
lulav.
I'm preparing a bracha for shaking lulav, so everyone can do this in the sukkah if they want.
Very often you can hear that there is a Jewish Renaissance in Poland, but it's not true. It's not Jewish Renaissance, it's a Renaissance of Jewish culture. I see hundreds of millions zlotys put into projects that are somehow promoting the culture and tolerance, but they don't benefit us. If you ask me what the community needs more, if it's Museum of the History of Polish Jews or if it's good school, I say good school.
Akceptację swojego miejsca w świecie w danym momencie.
Tak.
In Warsaw, there are Jewish people who are visible in culture, in media, in academia, and many of us can trace roots from people who are buried here on this cemetery. Some tombs have Polish letters. They were probably assimilated. This is the tomb of three classic writers from Warsaw: Itzhak Leibusz-Peretz, Dinezon, and Chinansky. Here you can find tombs of leaders of Bund, Jewish Socialist Party. This monument is dedicated to those Bundists who were fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Marek Edelman, who was one of the leaders of underground movement in the Warsaw Ghetto. First time I was in Yad Vashem in Israel, in Jerusalem. I was surprised to see that the history of the Holocaust was presented there as a history with a happy end. It all finishes in Israel. All leaders of Ghetto Underground are going to Israel. They continue their life in Israel. And Marek Edelman, his example was completely different. He stayed in Poland. He said, there is sense for me to stay here and to continue this philosophy of Doigkeit, of staying where you are and contributing to the local culture, being Jewish. I was raised in the ghetto area. My whole childhood I spent on Krochmalna Street. Okay, I lived in Krochmalna Street in a huge apartment house. It's hard for me to imagine Warsaw outside of the ghetto area. I mean, I know that it exists, but I feel there a little bit alien.